Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. I wonder what most of you heard in the homily last Sunday. Perhaps a joke or two at the start, followed by a focus on the second reading, with a final joke to round things off, maybe an anecdote about sport. If you were more blessed, the priest or the deacon will have tried, to the best of his ability, to deal with what are often called the difficult words of Christ, not only the Gospel this Sunday, but the first reading, which is always inextricably linked with the Gospel. This weekend, of course, we heard not only God's plan for marriage and the prohibition of divorce in the first reading, but then Jesus reaffirming it in the strongest terms. There's no doubt that as we nearly complete the first quarter of the 21st century, it's a challenge to preach the doctrine of indissoluble marriage to a world in which more than half marriages, including Catholic marriages, end in divorce. This would not have been a difficult subject 100 years ago. Add to that something our ancestors would never have conceived in their wildest dreams. We have Jesus reaffirming the biblical truth that marriage can only be between a man and a woman. There may be other arrangements, but it's not Christian marriage. The important thing, firstly, to remember is who is speaking. Sometimes people walk out of a church because they say they don't like the message of the priest or the deacon. They walk out because they're uncomfortable with the message. Who is speaking? It's not the priest, it's not the deacon. It is Jesus himself, God the Son, the second person of the Holy Trinity. So if we're uncomfortable with him, not with anyone else. Let's at least be honest about that. I think there are really only two options, add to that, when it comes to biblical truths, which may be difficult to hear, or which challenge us all, because they do challenge us all. That is to speak the word with charity and compassion, or to ignore it. I think we can all draw some conclusions from these two options, not just for the preachers among us, but for each one of us in our daily lives. The first and the most important is to remember that we are fallen, all of us sinners in need of God's mercy. Obviously, the original plan of creation, God's plan, was disrupted and damaged by the fall, yet the original vision, the original high calling remains. A nuanced reading of the scriptures last weekend would acknowledge that, without avoiding the truth. Secondly, a fact that we all don't really want to hear: Christianity is difficult. Just because we all fall and fail doesn't mean we lower the demands. A preacher must always preach to himself first, knowing that he is the first who needs to hear the message. Perhaps one is a bit of a glutton. Does that mean one never preaches on that? Or if one is proud, or if one gets angry? If we never preached on the reality of sin, whatever it is, even if we fail in something we're preaching about, there would be no preaching, which of course might cheer lots of people up. Another very important fact is a misunderstanding of judgment. We're all told today that we must not be judgmental. It's almost the worst thing we can be. Now that's quite silly, really. We all must judge that certain things are right and certain things are wrong if we believe we live in a moral universe. The difference is that we don't judge the soul of a person, while quite necessarily saying that an action or a behavior is wrong. It's not just preachers that need to hear the words of St. Gregory the Great in his pastoral rule. He writes, "Negligent religious leaders are often afraid to speak freely and say what needs to be said for fear of losing favor with people. That's as true in the pulpit as in the pub. For all of us, we must walk the difficult path of speaking the truth in love, acknowledging that we so often fail, but that we are aiming, as Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati said, we're aiming for the heights. Brethren, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, like a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour."